Hey, hi, Mitra, I'm
Hi,
here.
thank you so much for your patience. I really appreciate it. So I'll go ahead and I'll be introducing you. So basically, this next guest, why it seems very important. It's a very big honor for me, in fact, to be interviewing her today. Why I say this is because as a child, when I would go to when it was time for me to shop for my shoes, for example. All that time, my parents used to take me only to one and only one Bata India. I still vividly remember I would go with my sister and we would try to check our shoe size and we would get these your staple school shoes. With that, we used to buy the socks and sometimes it was a memory or the experience or the feeling of going back to school. It definitely had Bata in that process. So I think it's a dream come true for me in a way to be interviewing our next guest. So she is a powerful woman with over a decade of experience in CRM marketing, loyalty programs, customer lifecycle management, marketing automation, acquisition, retention, and her key skills are identifying and driving growth opportunities. Not only this, but she also enjoys leading diverse and cross-functional teams across many organizations and has helped most of the successful brands in driving successful marketing and business initiatives across e-commerce and retail industries. She is none other than Sayanthini Chanda. She has worked with name brands such as Make My Trip, Tata Docomo, Idea, and now spearheading the Department of CRM, Loyalty, Analytics, Customer Experience, and Contact Center at Bata India Limited. Sayanthini Chanda, I welcome you to the Frugal University's Frugal for Growth series.
Thank you so much, Mitra. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be a part of this session. And when you were mentioning Bata, there was a big wide smile on my face because I was joining Bata, in fact, a couple of years, 3 years back nearly. So I had the same kind of excitement. So it's really great to be part of that organization and be part of their automation and digital transformation journey. Thank you so much for having me here.
Amazing. So a little bit about Bata India for those of who you may be wondering, what is this brand? Of course, that question is not valid here. Bata India has been holding a unique place in the hearts of Indians for more than 80 years. Bata India is the largest footwear retailer in India, operating across 1,400 stores in 600 plus cities. Probably the only footwear brand that offers footwear and accessories for the entire family. Bata has redefined the modern footwear industry in India. It has established a leadership position in the industry and is the most trusted name in the branded footwear. Since its founding in the year 1984 by Thomas Bata, the company has consistently demonstrated its commitment to responsible and innovative business models in the belief that the capital is just not money, buildings, or technology, but more importantly, people, knowledge, and core values. This visionary approach has enabled the company to meet each new challenge with creativity and foresight while earning the trust and confidence of customers, employees, and the communities in which it does business in. Bata proudly serves nearly 1 million customers each day globally. The brand has won over several awards, including Image's Most Admired Fashion Brand of the Year in footwear category in 2019, Best Loyalty Program in Retail Sector, and Best Customer Experience in Retail Sector for single or specialty format at Customer Fest Awards in 2020. And last but not the least, the Best Contactless Service Experience at Customer Fest Awards in 2021. There's a lot of feathers to have in a cap, and I believe Bata has definitely been one of the most unified experience, not only just for me, but for my mother, my father, and my sister as well. So I think, like I said, it's an honor to have you here today. I think your voice is, we are unable to hear you, say, Anthony. Could you, I think that's, yeah, great.
Yeah, am I? Yeah. So sorry. It seems I put myself on mute and forgot to unmute myself. But anyway, thank you so much for having me in this session, and look forward to an enriching discussion. And will be happy to share my learnings, also learn from you, and let's have a great discussion. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. So this webinar is going to be working in this format. We will be having 30 to 40 minutes of discussions in terms of various aspects of marketing automation. So the topic for today is nothing but driving customer loyalty and customer experience using automation. So at the end of the session, the participants will get about 5 to 10 minutes to drop in their questions that they would love to get it answered by Sayanthini, and we would be taking them up post the webinar. So I'll start off with this first not so easy question is the fact that COVID-19. I think that one aspect of our lives is just so devastating. I believe the future generation will be looking back to this situation and wondering what the hell just happened. So this COVID-19, if we had to take it with the footwear industry, we've understood that the entire industry of the footwear has come down to 22.5%. That is 5.1 billion pairs of shortage by the beginning of March 2020, and sales fell by 67.4% worldwide. Not only that, there was a 35% decline in the export orders. But customers or participants, did you guys know that 70% of our export orders were usually from the USA and the Europe, and they were most affected nations? So, Sayanthini, my question to you is, how did Bata work through this crisis? How did you all figure this out?
Yeah, so as you rightly pointed out, Mitra, I think 2020 has been a challenge for all of us, a root shock, we can say. And like for every other industry, it was, and for every other players in the market, it was, a challenge for us with the entire lockdown happening, all our stores getting closed. Last year, April, I remember it was a complete lockdown, right? So it was definitely difficult, but I'll also mention along with this that the pandemic was quite a piece of amazing innovation for us. So one of the first things which we did was that as the market was actually gradually starting to open up after a month or so, is we went back to our consumers and tried to understand their new consumer behavior, which has been sort of expedited or which has sort of been brought in because of this entire COVID-19 thing or the pandemic which has hit us. So we went back, we listened to them. And what was more important is that we were able to pivot ourselves, the way we work, and we're very agile to sort of change ourselves to suit or to meet those demands, to meet the new consumer behavior. So we sort of saw, we did a couple of surveys on our engaged, loyal base of customers to understand what are they looking for after the pandemic and as the market was gradually opening up, how they're looking to shop at our stores, what are their expectations, not only in terms of the shopping experience at stores, but also in terms of the assortments or the merchandise they would like to look after. So we came up with our new work from home collection just as the market was gradually, starting to open up, because we usually saw the usual open air, the home essentials. The demand for that is much more than what it was a year back. Also, something which I'd like to mention here, a very interesting observation which came out when we reached out to our customers. We were able to distinguish our consumers into 3 specific segments. The first segment we call the digital natives. They were typically 25 to 35-year-olds, quite savvy in using tech. They are used to the online environment, used to ordering online. The second segment, which came out loud and clear, we used to call them the digital adapters. So they were someone who were adapt or who were comfortable using popular online apps like a typical WhatsApp, the easy one. However, they were not much savvy in terms of shopping online and needed some kind of assistance somewhere, typically age range of 30, 40, 50 years old. And then there was that segment, we used to call them digital novices, the 50 plus years olds. And that's also a very big segment for us. So we cater to the entire demox. It's not that one specific piece. So the digital novices were those customers, typically our parents maybe, or sometimes our grandfathers, grandmothers, more than 50 plus years of old. And they are someone who are not that technically conversant and are not comfortable using even a WhatsApp maybe, and would like that try and buy sort of thing. They would like to have the shoe in their hands, try it up and then buy it. So we could find that out loud and clear when we sort of went back to our consumers, tried and understand for them. And for each one of these segments, we had a different strategy altogether to sort of cater to their demands. And we came up with new business models literally in weeks of time to actually cater to these demands. For the digital natives, We sort of scaled up our digital presence, our own e-shop or bata.in significantly. We put a lot of focus there. For the digital adapters who needed some kind of assistance and something which came out of the survey, again, they would like to sort of speak with their neighborhood store managers, etc. We introduced Bata Chat Shop, which is basically shopping on WhatsApp. You can chat or even do a video call with your nearby store manager and sort of have an understanding of the kind of shoes which you want. They'll try and guide you through the process. Then they will collect your payment remotely and get you the shoes home delivered in a couple of hours. So that's what we did for the digital adapters. For the digital novices, what we did is that we sort of set up mobile kiosks inside residential complexes or societies. We used to call it Bata Store on Wheels. The initiative is named as Bata Store on Wheels. We set up that kiosks inside residential complexes and cities, and with all social distancing and safety measures incorporated, because they were like small kiosks, etc. And people of that society can come down, and with all social distancing measures and safety rules, they can look at the shoes, pay remotely. We had those tabs from which you can collect the payment remotely rather than taking the cash out of them, or exactly, it's all remote payment options there. You collected the payments remotely and they got the shoes. So the idea, what I was trying to kind of say here is that it just pushed us and you have to be really, really nimble and agile to try and understand what the new consumer behavior is and sort of pivot yourselves accordingly, especially given this entire uncertainty which we were faced with during last year at the time of pandemic. So that's how we did, and we sailed really well in terms of the traction which we got out of these business models.
That's absolutely great. I believe leave it to the the legends to take it forward in terms of how things have to be done and set yourself up like in a benchmark for the rest of them to look up to. So if I have to ask you this question, so COVID-19 in a way did turn out to be a blessing in disguise, where you'll have to get yourself ready for digital readiness, because I believe legacy brands usually take some time to get adapted to digital transformation. So in that way, I believe it was a blessing in disguise, I believe, right?
I would maybe beg to differ a bit here. I'll never call COVID-19 a blessing anyway. Having said that, it's not that we started our digital transformation journey because of COVID. Mm-hmm. So we had started it already a year or two back. Mm-hmm. So a year or two before, absolutely. So we have this initiative and we are really scaling this up, which we call internally FA2A, or from anywhere to anywhere, which means we should be able to serve our consumers with the best of the products from anywhere to anywhere. Doesn't matter whether they are at my stores buying the product or they are at their homes. So we have this Bata home delivery option, which is already present, wherein if you have walked to a store and you're not able to find your size or your design or your color, you can just look at our online catalog, place an order for home delivery, pay right at the store, and the shoes will get home delivered to you in a couple of days. So what I wanted to say is that we had indeed started our digital transformation journey already before. Maybe COVID expedited the entire process, and something, although we had started say in Bata home delivery earlier, we had never thought of something as a Bata WhatsApp shopping earlier, because it was never needed in that way. Absolutely. So COVID just expedited this entire thing, and we came up with much more variations in this entire particular digital transformation model and scaled up much more faster than maybe otherwise we would have done.
Absolutely. I think I stand corrected on that. But I believe what you said is very true for to be able to come up with such scale, to identify a target audience in different segments and to cater them from anywhere to anywhere. I think that way Bata definitely stands out as an innovation or an innovator. So what are your plans? So how is Bata going to look in terms of 2021? What are the plans for Bata in terms of expansions or working with the customers? How are we trying to work around this pandemic?
Sure. So obviously when 2021 started, we had a lot of strategies pulled in because we were coming out of the pandemic. Business was starting to again come back to near normal levels or the pre-pandemic levels. But as we all know, we have been again stuck by a second wave at this point of time. And as we speak, I hope all of you guys are safe. And I'll just reiterate to everyone out there who is listening to it, or maybe will listen to it at a later point of time. Don't let your guards down. Be safe. Take all the precautions. COVID is here to stay. We'll have to be very sure that we are able to take care of ourselves, of our health, most importantly than anything else. So I just wanted to mention this because I know the recent happenings inside the country, etc., which is happening. I think we are all trying to fight this together, and because this is bigger than last time. Anyway, coming back to your question, as I was saying, that when 2021 started, we had a lot of things built in, given that we were thinking that this is the year of rejuvenation or revival after the COVID started. But with now the second wave coming, it's a little bit different, and we'll have to again pivot ourselves and start thinking of bringing back some of those channels or some of those innovations, maybe packaged in a different way to cater to the consumer behavior. But something which we are doing very actively right now is that we are scaling up our digital presence actively. So we have sort of listed ourselves in the Mintras and the Flipkarts of the world, and we are also building. So I'll come back to I'll come back to the context of marketing automation a bit here. I'll try to answer that question from that. So what we are doing, we're in the process of implementing a better and a much more advanced commerce cloud solution for our website, which which will help me get a complete omni-channel view of the customer. So it doesn't matter whether you're shopping at our stores, or you're shopping from home delivery, or you're shopping from chat shop, or for that matter, you're shopping using our online website. We're trying to build a unified, connected customer view, not only for us, but also for the consumers. And we are implementing a commerce cloud solution, which is very tightly integrated with my CRM, with my stores, with my offline, with my loyalty engine, as well as with my customer service engine. So to cater to the customer life cycle, pre-sale, sales, as well as the experience. A big implementation which we are doing, and we believe that will really help us automate a lot of our consumer journeys and empower not only the marketeer but also the front line as well as the customer to have more meaningful conversations between each other. So, and I would sort of reiterate here that looking at the post-sales experience is also really, really important here. So if you want to drive customer loyalty, customer retention, your automation should span across the entire life cycle of the customer, limited to selling or then maybe cross-selling or upselling. So it is also very closely related with the kind of service experience you give to the customer post he has shopped with you. And hence, marrying this unified customer view or your campaigns with your customer service tool, we have a ticketing solution to manage that, marrying that so as to manage your journeys around refund, return, cancellation also in a much more automated way in this new era is also very important, and something on which we are actively working at this point of time.
I think in a nutshell, I believe it's a very happening future for Bata in a different, like in a very glorious way. I think like you've mentioned, right, marketing automation is something which we can't shy away from any longer. Any brand that has started off from many decades ago are starting to realize the importance of digital acceptance and digital acceptance across different segments of customers, and how it becomes like extremely important for brands and customers to be able to communicate. And I believe the power is in the brands and the customers, like you've mentioned right now, right? So because of you have your adapters, you have your no voices, you also have the tech savvy. Each of them communicate with technology in different ways, but they do like the same brand for different reasons. So unlike earlier when using offline marketing or the billboards or the big ads was the only way out to reach to the customer, now I think it's more to do with personal conversations, trying to understand what the customer likes and serve them better with every single order. And I think like rightly you've mentioned, the post-sale experience holds an absolute importance in a customer's mind. And the best part is if they are being treated well after they made a purchase, I think they'll remember it for a lifetime and they want to come back to you, right?
Absolutely. So I think for every brand, it is very important to always listen to the voice of your customer, collect feedback actively at each stage of the consumer life cycle, and take the corrective actions. Many a times you'll identify that maybe there is a correction which you need to make, maybe which you didn't realize until the time you go back and start hearing the customer. So we capture NPS actively across various consumer life cycle or various touch points, and we have a pretty good NPS score. And it's we always go back to our detractors and close loop them, try and understand what went wrong and how do I ensure I'm able to cater to that in a better way. And all this is actually done in a real-time basis. So we have an app, and you can just, the store managers can just look on a real-time basis the detractors which of their particular store, what are they posting. So what is very important in an organization like us, which is in a digital transformation journey, but for whom the front line of the retail piece is actually very, very important. It's still 90%, more than 90% of my business. So empowering your front line with the right kind of consumer information is extremely important, because out there at stores, they are going to strike that conversation with the customers. So how do you ensure you're able to use technology to empower them to have much more relevant conversation with the customers, pre-sales as well as post-sales? So the tools have to be really easy, and to be able to help them have better conversation and more relevant conversation of the customers. And this is also a very important leg of the marketing automation journey. So it's one is having a conversation directly with the customer, which is direct to customer conversation, but then also using automation to empower your frontline is another very important part of the automation journey.
So I think before we dig deeper into the marketing automation aspect, we would like to first clear some air. So what is marketing automation, and why do businesses need them, in your opinion?
Yeah, so I think in very simple language, marketing automation is all about using technology and tools to actually automate your various marketing activities and to streamline your consumer journeys to drive better customer experience at scale. I think what is important and what is most important word here is doing this at scale, which an offline form will never allow you to do. So in a current context, it's extremely important to apply marketing automation or that technology at every cycle at every stages of the customer life cycle, right from onboarding to selling to post sales, so that you can drive better customer experience at each of these journeys. This includes sending him more personalized communication, so the right content at the right time to the right target audience. That's a whole lot of automation built in to drive a better customer experience during the pre-sales phase or the sales phase. At the time of sales, using automation to empower your frontline so that they are able to have a better and more relevant conversation with the customer, helping them to drive better and improved conversion. That's the sales stage. And then comes the post-sales stage. What do you upsell? What do you cross-sell? What do you kind of say to make this customer a loyal customer of yours? Something which a Shantini will like will be very different from something which a Mitra will like. I have bought maybe a women casual shoes and you have bought a women formal shoes from Bata. What should be the next thing which I should send out to you? When should I send that out? So it's a lot of customer data analytics also built in together with the entire automation journeys to be able to cater to the customer expectation and serve them with more relevant content. If you're able to serve them with something which is relevant, they are going to come back and they are going to, have more engagement with you. So absolutely, it's like if I have to just sum it up in a word, how in a line. So how do you use technology to drive better customer experience at every stage of the consumer life cycle at scale to give you better ROI and better loyalty and engagement rates?
So that's very well put, by the way. But I want to understand a little bit more in terms of if brands have to take up marketing automation and they do understand communication is the key with the customer. So does it mean that it's only limited to email marketing automation, or is there any other medium that brands can actually tap into that will give them a better result, or maybe give equally good result?
Sure. I think that's again a very important question and a common myth maybe also. So gone are the days of single channel communication altogether. They doesn't have any significance now. It has to be multi-channel, and the channel is not only limited to emails or per se SMS or that matter. It's everything. So you have to identify the different interaction touch points through which your consumer are actually interacting with you. So if I have to give the example for Bata, we didn't have a lot of emails in the first place. Our primary identifier was mobile numbers, and of our total database, because it's a customer who's coming to a store and doing. We are not an online firm, right? A customer who is you doing a transaction website will give a will give an email ID, but a customer who is transacting at my store will just give will give mobile number. In fact, there are around 10% of customers who don't even want to share their mobile number in the first place, and with period of time we have improved that. So it's a journey. It's a journey which will have to continuously take and evolve. Coming back to channels, so for us, I'll give a Bata example to kind of explain it better. We started off with SMS because mobile number was a unique identifier, and the initial objective was just to get more mobile numbers from customer in the first place, because a lot of them were not sharing mobile numbers in the first place. Then came emailers with the entire digital transformation happening, and we also getting clear cues of the fact that people who are giving me their emailers or their profile details, and I'm able to reach out to them through multiple channels, or the channel to which they react better, are giving me more revenue, I have better LTV. So emails came into picture, but now it is not even emails or SMS. The third very important channel for an organization like Bata, or for that matter, any retail organization, is actually the store, the point of sale. It's a very important communication for us, because even if we send out a lot of communications to the customers, an SMS or an email, one is he goes to online and shops. If he comes back to our store, how do I ensure that he's actually converting at our stores? So the kind of tools, marketing automation tools, which I use at stores are all tools to drive conversion. So I'll maybe divert a little bit and try and say why I'm trying to say this. It's very important that when you are defining your marketing automation journey, trying to identify the tools which you should use, your objective or your use case should be very clear in your mind. So one set of tools will be to bring that consumer to your store. The other set of tools which you're using at the store is actually to drive conversion and get a transaction out of a customer who has actually walked inside your store. So in-store becomes a very important channel. And now social CRM, I think that's evolving like anything at this point of time, and we are evolving in it as we speak. So how do we reach out to them? Through the social media channels. We are running various social CRM campaigns around custom audience, around lookalikes, which will help me drive better conversion, etc. So that's another very important channel. And finally, I think WhatsApp is also becoming a very important channel with the entire digital transformation journey going on. So brands are making different consumer journeys, different self-service models in WhatsApp, so that so that customers can look at various information, can also directly shop from WhatsApp, etc. So it's a full-fledged multi-channel communication ecosystem. And I'll again repeat what I say, that gone are the days of single channel communication. That doesn't is not relevant maybe.
True. I think here is my next question. I think what triggers me in a way is the fact that when somebody says, like I said earlier, it's just about email marketing automation. Like that, are there any other myths that you have come across on your day-to-day life that has been told, yeah, this is marketing automation all about, or something that you wanted to say, this is not what it looks like, it is much more deeper and it does help on a very great scale?
I'll actually answer this. I think the biggest marketing automation myth which I have faced and I have seen given my decade-long experience is that many organizations I'll mention about two things. First, you have to believe as to why marketing automation, and investing in it. It's an investment, right? Why it's important. So you have to drive that thought leadership within the organization and make your business leaders believe in that vision. And hence, developing those use cases which can give you better ROI developing that, showcasing that, and building the case for marketing, for actually investing in marketing automation is very important. The myth which I was trying to talk about here and which just comes after this is that many marketers think that if I just implement a marketing automation system, my problem will be solved. I'll be able to communicate to consumers. I'll be able to kind of do all kind of personalizations, those dynamic stuff. And these are, I think, very, very, I'm sorry to say, but a little bit of abused words as well in the industry. So what I truly believe is that it's any marketing automation tool can only be successful, and you should even go after it once you have full clarity in your mind. What do you want to achieve? What is the use case? Try and go into the depth of your use case, try and break it down, the problem statement of what you want to achieve and how you want to achieve it in parts. Define those clear measurable metrics you want to achieve and what you want to do in the automation tool, and maybe start small, do a small pilot and try and see. So when I still remember those days when I first did the first implementation of an automation solution in one of a separate organization, it was not in Bata. We started off by doing a sort of a POC exercise, a proof of concept. We were speaking with 2 or 3 automation platforms, and we sort of zeroed down on a use case, and we ran a quick POC to understand how easy or difficult it is to do. What is am I actually getting that kind of ROI which I'm expecting to get out of it, etc., before we actually went full-fledged into it. So marketing automation tool will give you a plethora of things which you can do, a lot of things. There is no end to it. You can keep on building on it. But what is really, really important, and the myth which I really want to put to rest, is that before you even go for an automation tool, try and understand and try and identify what do you need to automate. They're not I mean, you don't need to automate everything. There are certain things which it's fine if you don't automate as well, because they are not those big opportunity areas, and that will completely depend on your industry, your customers, etc. First, identify your use case and then try and identify the right tool to solve your use cases, or the right intervention technology to solve your use case.
I absolutely agree with you, and I think on the fact that how people abuse the entire platform and build multiple automations. So I think what you said or what you mentioned also falls into the fact that they need to be aware of the customer life cycle. How, when the customer comes, walks into the store, what are the different triggers that are usually they come across that we as a brand are unaware, and build the loyalty automations, or the marketing automation that makes a relevant sense in that genre, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So understanding your customer lifecycle and data analytics goes hand in hand with that. Understanding your customers, understanding and not only data analytics, but also the VOCs also becomes important in certain steps. So you have to identify those opportunity areas, and that you can only identify once you have adequate data and you know your customers well. So it's all a journey which you have to first take.
I agree with you on that. So in your experience, since you in the beginning mentioned how you were able to work around building the customer segments for Bata with different customer behaviors, did you follow any hypothesis that was implemented during this process to understand what works for them and what doesn't? And in your opinion, what is the concept of hypothesis, and why is it important once you identify your customer behavior in the life cycle, right?
Sure. So yeah, I think Mitra, that's a very, very valid point and a very important thing as well. So, and it is not limited to doing it only at the start before you identify your use cases. Hypothesis testing is maybe a continuous process which brands should make a part of their DNA, especially the CRM marketeers or the loyalty marketeers. So we all have budget, and we are as marketeer, we all have limited budget, and we all go for maximizing or getting the best return of investment from our investments or from our campaigns which we do. So it's very important to always maybe keep, and that's something which we try and do always, and that's a best practice which I can recommend or suggest, is keep a part of your budget dedicated to doing some kind of hypothesis testing. And what do you mean by hypothesis testing? It completely depends on the kind of industry you are in, trying to understand to what does a customer react. Typical example in Bata case, what is the most relevant product a customer would buy? Those who have bought a premium Hush Puppy shoes with me versus those who have bought a open home essential or like a chappal with me. When should I reach back to them? What should I reach back to them in the first place? There is something as a product cyclicity, there is something as a customer cyclicity, and on top of that, you bring the propensity modeling around it. So your data will say you something, and you will say, hey, mostly to a customer who has bought a formal shoes, I'll maybe sell a casual shoes at this point of time. And for a man, I'll do that. For a woman, I'll do that. But how do you know it's true or not before we actually start doing this at scale? So that's what I'm coming back. So try and identify those small segments where you do this kind of pilots and tests, find out where is the sweet spot where you're getting the maximum ROI. So another example, how many times should I reach out to a consumer? I think that's a very, very important question for which many people will not have the right answer. I mean, does it mean that I just keep on reaching out to you every time? And we see many brands sending a lot of communications to their customers, but there has to be a sweet spot. It can't be that you keep on reaching out. So, and it can differ as, versus the kind of customer I'm looking at. So a customer can be very active on emailers and might be fine if you're reaching out to him multiple times versus another customer who doesn't like your emailers and maybe is more active on an SMS. So while data will give you the initial trends of it, you follow the trends and you try and test this out to actually zero it down and find out the sweet spot. And this is not one-time activity. This is a continuous activity. You do it every month, maybe in a 10, 20, you allocate some 20% of your marketing campaign investment budget or communication budget to doing this, to try and understand, to what a customer is reacting to better and where is that sweet spot. Some hypothesis will be successful, some hypothesis will be inconclusive. You are never successful always. So that's something which you'll have to make as a part of your DNA, as a part of your daily, or I'll say a monthly exercise per se, that always identify the things which you want to test out that month, leave aside a budget for that, run SMSs and emailers to try and understand and try and find out the sweet spot. If you get anything out of it, make it a part of your playbook. We call it the playbook. What are the things which always work with us? Make it a part of your playbook, move on, and come back to it maybe in a couple of months' time and retest it if required. So there's a continuous process which you have to make a part of your overall way of working.
That's great. So, so if I have to say, for example, you as somebody who brought this kind of a thinking or a thought process into a business or into an organization, the kind of zeal or the energy that we get in terms of data or quantitative analysis is really well put, right? However, while we're trying to bring that change into the organization, there is a large amount of reluctance because of the cost or the investment that is attached to this entire concept of marketing automation. So we'll have to set aside budgets for trying out the hypothesis versus your regular marketing campaigns that go on a day-to-day basis. So for example, have you come across such reluctance in any of the organizations you worked with? Or else, what is your take on it for somebody who might be facing such reluctance?
Sure. So I've been lucky enough to be part of organizations who have always believed in actually digital transformation and technology. So honestly, I have been part of organizations where my leaders have pushed me to innovate more, to come up with more, best practices or more tech-driven automations or innovations which can help us drive better customer experience. Having said that, I mean, I completely agree that all my leaders were completely into it. They wanted to invest in it. Having said that, even forget only your leaders, and even if you're getting some resistance, then obviously you have to convince your leaders. You'll have to be convinced yourself on whether it makes sense for you to go ahead and do an investment. So I'll go back to something which I was trying to mentioning at the start. Identify a use case, do a POC, and many a times POC doesn't come with a lot of cost. It comes with very nominal cost, because brands or tools which you are taking, they will be willing to do a POC with you. So you speak with references. So for example, when you are, getting a marketing automation tool on board, you will get references of those particular organization or the tool. They will give you references, speak to them, try and understand the use cases or the trends which the other clients have got. and then come back to the drawing board, identify use case and identify the ROI, which will help you justify in your mind as to why you should do it in the first place. And trust me, you will always get that ROI. I mean, given my experience, I'm saying 100% you will get the ROI, but maybe you'll not get the ROI in all the use cases. So it's about the prioritization exercise which you will have to do. You will have to be clear in your head, because I've been lucky enough to part of organizations who have always believed in empowerment. And if I would have believed in it, if I have given a business use case, they are all in for trying it, and they are all in for looking at this. But ultimately, you are responsible for what you are trying to do. So you have to take that ownership, and you have to sort of believe in what you are doing and then go after it. So I'll always suggest a POC to actually get some results, which will also help you bring about thought leadership in your organization. In case you are kind of getting any resistance, you will be able to always use that POC as an example to make your leaders believe as to why this is important. And once that kind of taste blood, trust me, all will fall into place.
Correct. I think kudos to such organizations who actually like to prioritize the digital readiness and the importance of reaching out to customers in multiple ways. More than the marketing automation, if you have a driving team or a very accepting team in terms of ideas, implementations, the entire process becomes more joyful, because the kind of insights you get as a marketer or as a CRM expert themselves, it's just extremely thrilling. So I would, for example, if I implement marketing automation and I did find some kind of XYZ information through the process, I think my joy would know no bounds, because I'm getting inch closer every time to know my customer a little better. So my things get a little better. So, but here in this process, right, it doesn't look like the entire fruit or the end results definitely look very luring to me as a marketing expert myself. However, the journey is something which is also equally challenging. So in your opinion, while building a marketing automation, it takes a lot of efforts, brainstorming sessions, and a lot of other aspects to build these kind of workflows. So is there any ideal time frame that you think a brand, let's say an SMB brand, should be giving to this entire process of building in order to build that foundation for the marketing automation?
Sure. So I think the word foundation, which you rightly said, is very, very important. Your campaigns all rest on the foundation or the data engine or the segmentation engine, which you're building right at the crux. And then your campaigns rest on top of it, and you keep on doing everything. So I believe as an SME, a typical time to implement, and I'm talking about a basic solution here, is at least a 3 to 6 months period, depending on the amount of database you have, but again, depending on the amount of legacy systems which you have.
Yeah.
I have just said for an average player whose life is pretty much sorted and stuff, and who doesn't have a very huge database, a 3 to 6 months should be good enough for you to build the foundation and start off with your initial campaigns. But I'll actually like to mention here that it also depends a lot on the kind of legacy systems which you have. Because your customer data is actually sitting in those legacy systems, and how do you consume that and make it a part of your current automation system is also an exercise which you'll have to do. So it's not only a marketer which is doing it, that's why it's a mark tech role, as we call it sometimes. You have to partner very, very closely. It's a completely cross-functional implementation. Partner with the business or the category teams who will help you with the right kind of assortment. You have to, or with the right kind of communications from your UI UX teams. And obviously, last but not the least, you have to partner closely with people who will help you implement this in the first place. So, okay. Yep, I think a 3 to 6 month period, but with legacy systems and higher amount of data, it can take longer.
I believe, like you rightly said, right, legacy systems are one biggest challenge that I, at least as a MBA student or MBA grad, while we are trying to understand these different concepts, we were introduced as a case study to understand how can legacy brands move from legacy systems to cloud-based systems. I think cloud is, like you said, is so viable, so connected. It's absolutely omni-channel. Things move seamlessly. The experience is just, it knows no boundaries at all. A customer walking into the store might be technically sitting at home, but the experience is like being in a store. And customer who's at the store is feeling much more safer because the entire kiosks are set up in such a way that he doesn't have to worry about XYZ things. So that way we're giving the choice to the customer ultimately and asking them, hey, this is the product, this is what we have for you, and we want to give you the best. We are okay in however you want to explore it. We just want to make the experience as rich as possible. Right. So while this entire process is going on, so we've given the 3 to 6 months of the time, we've built the different use cases, we've identified different customer segments that we can use this entire marketing automation to. Now we have the entire module ready and we have just started implementing it. Is it too soon to be expecting results, or in your understanding, what is the ideal time frame that a brand should expect any results to come out? If that time frame is set, what are the kind of first level success metrics that you might be coming across?
Sure. I'll speak about success metrics first, and then I'll speak about the time frame, because time frame actually depends on the industry as well. And trust me, your POC will help you also understand the time frame a little bit better. So when I was saying the 3 to 6 months period, I'm not including the POC. The POC will help you understand it better a lot and help you take those calls. Coming to the metrics, I think some of the very important metrics are what's the return on investment or the cost per sale which you're generating out of a particular campaign by implementing this automation solution. So that's a very important KPI. Sometimes we call it ROS, which is return on ad spend. So yeah, the most important thing is if you're spending $1, how much you're getting in return, and ultimately they should drive that. Other than that, there are the other health metrics like repeat rate, like retention, higher NPS or CSAT scores. The loyalty program currency redemption rate should jump up. The repeat rate should jump up. These are the typical, I'll say, other KPIs and health metrics, which we also track and we should track ultimately. Along with that, again, depends on which area you are doing the marketing automation. If you're doing a marketing automation in the area of customer service and experience, which is more of post sales, then not only measuring NPS or CSAT scores, but in general, also you should have a close look on the matrices of your contact center or your customer service. What is your resolution, SLA? How much volume are you getting in the contact center and stuff like that? What are your customer telling in the contact center? If you have had some high complaints, are they actually coming down with time after you have implemented this or not? So while I spoke about the generic KPIs or the metrics which you should measure, it again depends a little, quite a lot on the KRAs which you are trying to do. So on the use cases which you are trying to do. So while it's like a campaign level KRA or a repeat level, you also have to look at the bigger picture. So by doing this entire marketing automation solution, have I been able to increase my repeat rate at an overall level? Are more customers coming back to me? Has the engagement with my loyalty program actually increased considerably? Has my NPS score also jumped considerably? So these metrics are a little long time. It will not happen immediately. While campaign ROI and ROSs are something, or the point redemption rate is something on which you can see the impact maybe within a month or so. But for these other matrices, which are the bigger matrices, the impact always takes a couple of more months again. Again, depends on the industry, how frequently that article is bought in that industry. A typical FMCG or a typical food industry or a typical travel industry versus a typical Bata or an apparel and fashion industry will behave separately in terms of that determining how much time will take for the bigger matrices to get impacted.
Here, I think even though the time frame sometimes varies from months to days to X amount of time, once the results starts rolling in, I believe it's sweet spot. It's like having dessert at every morning, like a cup of coffee. You see the entire view of how things are rolling. I think that way, I believe marketing automation did change a lot in terms of how unfathomable it was for the brands in terms of like the effect it had positively on their business over time. But once it started, it kept increasing tenfolds, and it's something that they will give their 100% in. So the initial hesitation of till it hits the right spot in terms of the return, it will be like a pain to understand where. But I think having a look at it in a more learning experience, like you mentioned. Every time a customer says something, are we listening to them? Are they trying to say something to us that we need to pay attention to? So this entire journey of implementation and building the foundation is trying to be open in terms and receptive in terms of feedback from the customers. What are they saying, right? So now coming to this very important point, which marketing automation, and I think this particular aspect goes hand in hand, is customer loyalty. I think customer loyalty is something you strive for. And as I can say clearly, even right now sitting, I'm wearing Bata slippers and Bata sandals, and I can say very clearly that Bata is that brand that I usually go, and it's right near my office, so I can just stroll, and if I want to buy a new pair, I get it, put it on, and I come back. Or else if in my crisis time, I go to Bata because I know I can depend on them for some comfortable yet stylish designs that I can reach out to. So in your opinion, for a brand that is launching a customer loyalty program, how can marketing automation pair up and become a kick-ass combination in terms of customer loyalty as such?
So Mitra, as you rightly mentioned at the very start when we were asking this question, it actually goes hand in hand. It actually goes completely hand in hand, because loyalty is just defining another customer life cycle. It's an integral part of the customer life cycle, and the loyalty program journeys has to be built within the right kind of customer life cycle journeys in the first place. So if I have to give you examples, and rather before moving on to example, and when as a user you're envisioning or kind of want to set up a loyalty program, you have to do a lot of research to try and zero down on the construct of the program per se. Why do you want to do this? What are the objectives you want to drive out of the loyalty program? What do your consumers like? Why will they become loyal to you? Because you will launch this program. So I'm sure you'll have to do a lot of research, primary, secondary, combined, to actually zero down on a particular construct. After that, when a marketer will actually start defining the loyalty program journeys, what he or she will have to ensure is that the loyalty program journeys and the usual customer lifecycle journeys actually marry and go hand in hand. So, for example, there is a customer who has come and shopped with you for the first time. After that, he becomes part of your loyalty program. So there is one onboarding journey for a new customer who is coming in, plus there is a separate onboarding journey for a new customer who is getting enrolled to your loyalty program. How do they coexist? I'm just giving an example here. So you can't keep on sending a lot of communication to the same customer. How do you ensure you're able to have the right kind of tools built in, or the right kind of rules built in, so that these two life cycles marry with each other and you don't end up over communicating or overselling anything to the customer? So one of the things which I always keep on saying is that anything which you build in automation, try and keep it simple. Try and keep it simple for the customer as well as for yourself. If you make it overcomplicated, overwhelming, it will be different. So coming back to the loyalty program piece, when you... Sorry, you were saying something. Actually, I think there is a lag, and your network is again sort of...
Oh, my bad.
I missed. Were you asking something? Sorry, Mitra.
Oh, no, actually, I was chiming in terms of I like the connection between, like how you mentioned, the marrying of customer onboarding to seamlessly moving into customer loyalty. Keeping it simple is the key to any success of loyalty program. And I go and try certain loyalty programs just for the fact that they're absolutely simple. I don't have to think a lot. I know if I make a purchase, this is what I get in return. And I keep accumulating points, or I get freebies in return. So yeah, I mean, absolutely right. I mean, I couldn't have thought this in a better way, and that struck a very good chord in my mind. Yeah.
So absolutely, I think thanks for sort of resonating the view as a consumer as well. But yeah, that's the key. You have to really keep it simple for the customer, because it's not that he is only enrolled to your loyalty program. He's enrolled to 5 other loyalty programs maybe, and there's only so much share of mind he's giving to you. So how do you ensure in that particular share of time you're serving him with the most kind of relevant information? Or rather, when he's thinking about you, how do you ensure that he's able to discover you very quickly? So that when he wants to say, hey, what is my point balance? When is it expiring? Or maybe do I have any voucher which I can use in Bata at this point of time? It should be very easy for him to discover it quickly. Doesn't matter he's sitting at his home, doesn't matter he's sitting at the store. Even if we ask the customer, even if we ask the store manager, hey, I'm a loyal customer, I think, but do I have any coupons which I can use in this particular purchase? The store staff should be able to answer right away, yes, sir, you have it. I can see it here near my system, and I'll send it to you right away in SMS so that you can use it now if you want to, or you can use it at a later point of time also if you want to. These are the kind of tools or interventions which we have actually built into so that this kind of customer journey can go on seamlessly. So identify the moments of truths, keep it simple, keep the discovery simple, and marry the customer life cycle with the loyalty program journeys, be it in terms of onboarding the new user, the welcome journeys, the enrollment journeys, feedback from the user. If you are actually doing any profile enrichment exercise or something, collecting more information, if you're running birthday, anniversary campaigns, if you're running campaigns around simple currency earn, burns, or on cross-selling and upselling, try and marry it with your customer lifecycle journey. Another typical example, you have bought something from me, I want to cross-sell you something in your next transaction. To a non-loyal customer, I send a plain vanilla communication which actually says that you'll get XYZ off, or this is what you can buy from me. But to my loyal customer, maybe I send the same communication, but coupled with an additional benefit which you will get because he's a loyal customer. So why I'm actually giving this example, marketing automation will allow you to set up both the journeys. It's important that you combine this journey so that you actually don't end up separating, kind of double communications to a loyal customer. So marry these journeys, determine the right kind of content, and bring them together as far as the stages are concerned, be it in the loyalty program or be it in the usual customer life cycle.
Okay, I think nobody could have said it better, for sure, in my opinion. So in this process, right, this is where I would love to ask you this question, saying we've identified everything that can go well with marketing automation and customer loyalty program. However, there are still major challenges and issues that brands face for even choosing some simple journeys as such. What could be the issues that you have faced personally in your journey, and how have you resolved them?
I'll again say the same thing, which might sound a bit cliched, but I think that's most important. Put them in your shoes, think that you are the consumer, and then build those. Keep it simple. Don't get overwhelmed. If you want, you can build 1,000 consumer journeys, but doesn't matter. Build the top 5 ones, the big ones. So it's simple for you so that you are also as enabled. So if you build too many journeys, it will be difficult for you to also measure them properly and try to see the impact of one over the other. So instead of building 100 consumer journeys, it's important to, 100 is just a number and 5 is also just a number. Don't go by the semantics. But I'm trying to say is that keep it simple for yourself also so that you are able to measure it properly, monitor the impact properly, and keep it simple for your customers also. I think one of the most common things which I have seen, and it has happened with me as well when I had started off this journey back, kind of 7-8 years back when I was new in this area. It seemed I wanted to do just everything. So many things happening, and I wanted to kind of automate every bloody thing which I was looking at the consumer life cycle, and I wanted to do all together. But it really doesn't make sense. It will not make sense for you. It will not make sense for the consumer as well. You cannot prioritize on 100 things together. Prioritize, identify your use case, prioritize the big ones which will have the maximum opportunity area, and build on top of that. If you try to build 100 at one go, you will definitely encounter issue and you will not be able to check also properly.
I think, like you rightly said, right, it can be 5 priority right now, but 100 over time that you go every quarter on quarter, month on month, you can achieve the same 100 to 1,000 automations over the span of X to Y time, rather than just, I want to do it everything right now. It will be so overwhelming to the customer that they want to opt out of it. So for example, I've gone through this magazine website where they were asking me to select different genres of newsletters that I would like to be receiving. And I didn't know the fact that as a consumer, or else I didn't pay attention that every week I'll be getting them. So every week or every other day, my inbox would be filled with this one particular process, one particular brand's different genre of newsletters. And the worst part was, if I have to opt out of that automation, or where I had to get the newsletters, I had to physically go into every genre of the newsletter to unsubscribe for that one single aspect. So not only this was like a wrong choice to put a customer in, where you gave me the option, that's great, very fine. But did you think, if I had to exit out of that particular journey, how comfortable would I be able to do it? It doesn't leave a good taste in the customer's mouth, in terms of that wasn't a great experience. I wish they could have done it better. And I think that way we are ruining everybody's day to day, right?
Absolutely. So the biggest issue, as you said, it's don't overdo it. Don't overdo it. It will be too much for your consumer, and trust me, it will be too much for you as well to understand or to manage in the first place. Achieve the 5 big, then move to the next 5 big. Prioritize. I think prioritization is very important in everything what you do.
Okay, so this is a very personal question that I would actually, out of the webinar, that I would like to understand is, you definitely, in your decade worth of experience, you have loved marketing automation and anything related to technology and marketing, right? In the entire journey of automation, in your personal preference, which aspect is something in the process you find it extremely fun to do?
Oh, I think building the consumer journeys is the most interesting part.
Yeah.
It's the most interesting part. So, when you start thinking like a consumer, when we actually build it down and break it down into parts, and we sort of discuss, have brainstorming sessions on this. So how will a consumer behavior? What are the different options we should give him in the first place here? So building those consumer journeys, I think, is the most fun part, because it involves a lot of iterations and reiterations as well. And there the hypothesis testing also comes into picture. And something which, trust me, a marketeer and marketeers are all about consumers, right? So they will always have fun out of it, because that's very interesting. And sometimes the other fun part of it is that you think of something and you think the consumer will react in X way. And when you actually see him reacting in X way, giving you that much ROI, that's a different level of joy in the first place, when you see the campaigns which you believed in working. So I think that's the most interesting and fun part of it. And it gives you such a end-to-end and complete view of a consumer, that it helps you take a lot more decisions in a much more better way in other aspects of your professional career, as in professional kind of areas as well. So building those consumer journeys has been the most fun part, and interesting as well.
I think I resonate a lot with you in this aspect, because I'm also somebody who enjoys learning about what makes the customer purchase a product and what doesn't. So in that genre, once if I get into the zone where what makes a customer purchase, the thoughts are endless. We just go into the cycle of building so many of them, and then we have to calm ourselves down and be like, no, we have to prioritize. We have to select the ones which are making at the relevant sense at this time. So that way, I think it's a great, we do resonate in that aspect, and I'm really glad I did find somebody else who loves building customer journeys like I do.
Absolutely, great to know that. I think that's the crux, and if you're able to make it better, and if you're able to prioritize, that's also something which you said rightly. You have कर देते हैं, ये भी कर सकते, ये भी कर सकते. There are so many things which you can do. So just prioritize, understand those opportunities later, but it's a great fun exercise to brainstorm and build it end to end.
Yeah. So, I mean, wow, this has been one of the most thrilling and exciting webinars that I was able to take so far. And I think we have come to the end of webinar, and we do have a couple of questions lined up for you. So I'll go ahead and I'll start with the first one. So the first question is, talking about loyalty strategy design. Are the models unified to any business vertical, or it also varies from brand to brand? As we see, most of the programs or of brands look very similar. What are the factors that are to be considered while designing one?
Sure. So my take on this is, you have to, what should you consider? And I agree to their point that somehow the basic construct might seem similar, but what is really important, that before you launch it for your particular brand per se, do your level of secondary and primary research. So secondary research will give you an understanding of what is going on in the industry, what are the various options possible in the industry, etc., and what are your competitors or what are your peers doing out there, and what is maybe more popular out there. You have to always couple it up with a primary research which you do on your consumer base, and try and understand, maybe out of 10 things which your competitors are doing, 5 things resonate better with your consumers, and then you'll have to go after them. So a best done loyalty program, and I remember, and this is not an example from well, I can give an example from Bata as well, but I remember an example from a previous organization of mine, Make My Trip, when we had relaunched our loyalty program. So we had actually started it off by doing a pilot on 50,000 members to kind of check on whether what we are thinking that customers might resonate on the best are they resonating with them or not. So it's always better to not start like whole hog on the entire base with a loyalty program. Run a kind of a CUG program do a sort of a POC on some of your most engaged base of users to see whether what you have thought or what you have derived from the secondary and primary researchers done by talking with consultants, if you're talking with them in external consultants as well, are your consumers resonating with them or not, and then take it forward accordingly.
Okay, so the next question that we have is, how do you say brand is GDPR compliant, and what are to be taken care along the implementations of loyalty program and marketing automations?
So I think GDPR compliance is something which is not very much followed in India per se. That's a phenomenon like of outside. But in India, also something which has started right now, people who are doing SMS will be aware of it. We always have that ND, non-DND and DND in picture. So you have to honor and not send out anything to DND customers. But however, at the same time, right now, TRAI has started up and we have these DLT regulations in place, so that we have to get all our templates whitelisted before you actually send out any communications to them. So coming back, how do you relate with it automation? So you have to maintain a separate opt-out and opt-in engine in the first place. Make it easier for customers also to opt in as well, to opt out as well as to opt in if they want to, and make it an integral part of your foundation work, which we spoke about during the webinar when you are building in. So the opt-out, opt-in engine and the rules of it has to be there, and it has to be configurable enough so that if you want, you can change it at a later point of time. So I'll just take this one step forward. It's not only about whether the customer has opted in and opted out. You should also keep a close watch of how many times you're actually sending out a communication to a customer. So that kind of typology rules has to be also built in the marketing automation system, that at any point of time, we used to call it typology rules. Sometimes we used to call it ATC or air traffic control rules as well internally as terminologies, that we'll have to ensure that I don't kind of bombard a particular customer with a lot of information. Right? So those are rules which you have to build inside your automation system, because you cannot do it. You are doing like 25 different SMS or email campaigns at one go. Maybe you cannot ensure you do it every time manually. So you have those master or universal typology rules where you prioritize the kind of communication which should go out to user, and the system will take care of what is to be sent and what is not to be sent.
So I think in that point, or to the point I can add, is the fact that know your customer, like you mentioned, ask them how they like to be communicated, how frequently they like to be communicated, weekly once, monthly once, weekly twice, based on the fact that they've given in an option to be communicated once a week. We can design communications within that week span itself that can have maximum impact. That way we can avoid customer fatigue and trying to get them diverted or churned out from the business. So the next question that we do have here is, as a business, since we always have to think about future, what do you think sustainable changes that might come up in the next 5 years in the vertical of loyalty program and marketing automation implementations? So we have sustainability and marketing automations here.
Sustainability, that's a very interesting question, and maybe not something for this.
More in the context of sustainable changes, but I think, also sustainability with marketing automation is a very interesting topic that is not explored yet per se.
Yeah, it's a very interesting take. Yeah, it's not explored to a very large extent, but something which I think all brands try to do it in some way or the other. So I'll actually divide it into two parts, and I'll say what will happen and which direction is this moving in the next 5 years. I think digital transformation is, and I'm not talking about in the sustainability context, but in general how to make it sustainable, and I'll answer that part first. So I think all organizations, especially with the pandemic situation right now, are in the process of, a lot of the brands are in the process of building the unified customer view and the omni-channel journeys and moving to a more of a phygital space, as we call it. So it's neither physical nor digital, but somewhere in between. It's phygital. So that's one area where a lot of the brands are investing in, and that's one area which will actually grow manifold over the coming years, not only in terms of campaigns. So how do you marry social CRM? How do you take it up to the next level? How do you do online to offline as well as offline to online retargeting? How do you serve the best digital experience to your customers is one area where we will see a lot of work happening in the, it has already started, I think, but I think organizations are yet to get the full benefits out of it. So a lot more can be done. So that's one area which is evolving heavily with time. As far as just answering the question on sustainability, which is the other sustainable thing, and I think that's a very good question. Many brands do it. I mean, we, for example, at Bata have a CSR initiative in place. We do multiple things to actually drive CSR, be it donation of shoes, etc., etc. There are multiple initiatives. We have a CSR, a separate person who looks after it, a separate vertical. At the same time, how do we try to link it with our loyalty program? We haven't done a lot of stuff, but something which we have done. So there is this Go Green initiative, which we have started at our stores. We encourage people to not take carry bags. We encourage people to not take physical invoices. So what we have done to kind of marry that with a loyalty program is that anyone who is not taking a physical invoice and is opting for a digital invoice, I gave them an additional bonus points, which is limited, which will help them get some benefits in their purchase. So that's one of the ways, and that's also automated, by the way. So that's also another campaign which is running in the back end, that if you do not take a plastic bag in your purchase, I'll credit you X amounts of points. So that's something which we are doing. But yeah, that's an interesting thought, and maybe not something for which I have a ready-made answer at this point of time, but an interesting thought for sure, and an area which can be built in loyalty as well. Interesting.
Absolutely. I think sustainability is in a way the future of any business or the world where we are going currently. And I think marketing automation does have a wonderful role, in my opinion, that can be played to achieve sustainable goals. But otherwise, I think these changes, like you've mentioned, small and medium scale businesses and also large scale businesses are moving in the direction of adopting to digital transformation. And that looks like very promising to us. And I think it's all about, if you can take up a little bit of space in my phone, then you have a place in my heart. So that way, I think I give you the priority over other brands at any point of the time. So that's for sure a good thing, right? Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So we have a next question. I think after this one more question, we can end the session. So
I was just about to say this. Yeah, sure.
So I'm running a small business. What are the best steps to collect critical data in offline stores, and where customer is not reluctant to share?
Sorry, Mitra, your voice is breaking very badly again.
Okay, I'll just repeat the question.
I wasn't able to hear the question.
Yeah. I'm running a small business. What are the best steps to collect critical data in offline stores, and where customer is reluctant to, and where customer is not reluctant to share in small scale businesses?
Sure. I think obviously it's small scale, while we are a large scale. In our case, also 4 or 5 years back, people were not willing to share their data a lot. So you'll have to start off with you have to come up with store facing as well as consumer facing programs, which will encourage or incentivize a customer for sharing the benefits. So for example, when we started this exercise, so right now we are doing something as a profile enrichment drive at our stores. So we have a lot of mobile numbers, but what we don't have are email IDs, birthdays, etc., gender, etc. So we don't have a lot of that. We have around 10 to 15%. So what we are trying to do at stores, we are running some kind of a store-based incentive program. So if the store guy is able, the store people, the stores which are able to collect more of customer profile information, I'm rewarding them with some kind of benefits. So what I want to drive with this example is that you will also, not only your customer facing schemes or incentives, you have to also motivate your frontline. Doesn't matter how small the business is, but you definitely will have a front line. So you have to, at least in the initial parts, if you have nothing, you'll have to have some kind of a trigger to motivate them to start doing this exercise in the forms of rewards or in the forms of recognitions, etc. And once they taste the blood, you have to go back and tell them why this is actually is doing good. For example, in our case, we saw the stores who are actually collecting this profile actively, their conversion is actually increased because the people who are the customers who are actually giving this profiles were more engaged with the brand. So we were able to go back and tell this, and it's like tasting blood and understanding is this works, and then they would try to do it by themselves. So to start off, because it's there nothing, you have to start programs not only at a customer level but also for your front lines to actually encourage them and inculcate this behavior in them in the first place.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on this. In fact, I believe a loyalty program is successful only when your customers, your employees, and the organization as a combined unit believe in it and they execute it at every stage with 100% efficiency. Then the results are like, why wouldn't it turn out better, right? So I think I've taken a little bit more of your extra time, and because it was going so great, I didn't want to stop this webinar. But I think it's unfortunate that we do have to put an end to this webinar. But I think it was a real great honor to have you, Sayanthini. I think since last year I've been following up with you actively, and I really wanted you to be on board with us. So I think it's a great privilege to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mitra. It was a great session and very enriching one. I loved, have the conversations with you. It was great to see you resonating a lot of thoughts which I had. So I just hope the learnings have been helpful to will be helpful to everyone, and all the best to everyone for a great, building a great consumer journey or customer loyalty program. But last but not the least, everyone, please stay safe and don't let your guards down.
Yeah, I think absolutely, yes, it's a very critical time. We need to be aware of what's at stake and behave responsibly and being the responsible citizens of India. So I think this is the end of the webinar for Frugal for Growth series webinar. And do stay tuned. We are from the Frugal.ai. We are a customer loyalty and engagement platform working to build meaningful relationships with brands. We'd love to partner and we work with bigger brands such as Aptronics, Creamstone, Pista House, and many, many, many more. And I think this is the beginning of learnings and new information that we want to share through Frugal University. And it's a great pleasure to have this webinar today. Thank you so much, Sayanthini. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this webinar. We'll see you soon with the next one.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.